I never thought my marriage would end because of a conversation over salad. 8 years with my wife had taught me the quiet rhythm of stability. We weren't one of those couples who posted perfect photos online or talked in dramatic vows. We were just solid. We had our routines, weekday work, Saturday groceries, the occasional trip when money and time lined up. We argued sometimes, sure, about bills, about which family to visit on holidays, about my habit of turning the garage into a second home, but nothing that felt like a crack in the foundation. That's why the last 6 months felt strange in a way I couldn't name at first. Like the air in the house was slightly thinner. Like my wife was leaning forward into something I couldn't see, while I was still standing where we'd always stood together. It started with her best friend. 6 months ago, her friend, someone I'd known almost as long as I'd known my wife, was caught having an affair. Married, kids, the whole picture. For what I understood, she'd gotten involved with a coworker. Her husband found out. There was yelling, crying, the usual collapse. Now, they were filing for divorce. I'd seen enough of these stories in real life and online to know how it goes. What I didn't expect was my wife's reaction. At first, I thought she was just being loyal. She's always been fiercely protective of her friends. If someone hurts one of her people, she takes it personally. So when her friend's marriage exploded, I assumed my wife would be sad, maybe disappointed, maybe even angry at the friend for risking so much. Instead, she defended her. Constantly. Every time the topic came up, my wife turned it into a lecture about how her friend was misunderstood, how the husband was dramatic, how people needed to be more compassionate. I tried to stay neutral because it wasn't my business and because jumping into someone else's marriage mess usually only makes it worse. But the way she talked about it, it wasn't neutral at all. It was sharp, emotional, like she was fighting a battle that mattered to her more than it should. Last Tuesday, at dinner, it reached a level I couldn't ignore. We were at the table, tired after work. Nothing fancy, just chicken, salad, and the news playing low in the background. I was halfway through eating when she brought it up again. "He's being such a baby about this," she said, stabbing her salad hard enough to make the fork click against the plate. She made a mistake. "He's acting like she burned the world down." I looked up. I'd heard this line before, but something in her voice that night felt different. Not just annoyed, righteous. One mistake that lasted 6 months. I said carefully. She didn't blink. "You don't understand." She was lonely. He works all the time. She was alone in that house every night with no attention, no affection. She has needs. There it was, the word she kept using. Needs. I set my fork down. Not because I was trying to make a point, but because my appetite suddenly disappeared. "So cheating is justified if you're lonely?" I asked. "You're twisting it," she snapped back. "I'm saying women have emotional and physical needs. If men can't meet those needs, they shouldn't be surprised when women look elsewhere." I stared at her, waiting for her to soften it, to add something like, "Of course it's not ideal," but she didn't. She just kept going like she'd been rehearsing this speech in her head for weeks. "That's insane," I said. "If you're unhappy, you talk about it. You work on it. Or you leave. You don't betray someone and then call in need." She rolled her eyes in that way she does when she thinks I'm being predictable. That's such typical male thinking. Women are complex. We need attention, affection, passion. You guys treat everything like a problem to solve with logic. Sometimes it's not that simple. I was trying to stay calm, but I could feel something tightening behind my ribs. It wasn't just disagreement. It was the way she sounded like she was arguing against me personally, not just defending her friend. "If you're not getting it at home," I said, "you end a relationship first. You don't go behind someone's back." "God, you're so judgmental," she fired back. This is why she didn't tell her husband she was unhappy. Because men make everything about their egos instead of trying to understand. The words hit harder than they should have. For a moment, I didn't speak. I just watched her. The passion in her face wasn't the kind you get when you're casually discussing someone else's drama. She looked like someone protecting a worldview that mattered personally, like she was defending a version of herself. And suddenly, little things from the past months drifted into my mind. Not as proof, not as clear dots to connect, just fragments. The late nights after book club, the The new gym membership she didn't talk about much. The way she'd started carrying her phone everywhere, even into rooms she used to leave it lying around. The way her laughter sometimes came from another room at a time that didn't fit any normal call. At the time, each detail lived in its own corner of my head. Innocent, explainable, a life getting busier, a woman finding routines that didn't include me at every step. But hearing her say men should accept it with that hard certainty made those corners feel closer together. You really think cheating is acceptable? I asked slower now. She relaxed back into her chair like she'd been waiting for that question. I think people make mistakes. I think marriages are complicated. I think men need to accept that women have needs and stop acting like victims. Something clicked. Not a full conclusion, more like a lock turning. I didn't accuse her. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't even argue anymore because I realized I wasn't debating philosophy. I was standing at the edge of truth I didn't want to name out loud. Instead, I let my face go still. I let my tone go light. Interesting philosophy, I said. That was all. She looked satisfied, like she'd won. She went back to eating as if we'd just finished talking weather. But I couldn't swallow another bite. My mind was elsewhere, replaying her words, reweighing the last few months, staring down a quiet fear that had just found a shape. I excused myself, told her I needed to check something for work. She waved me off without looking up, still scrolling her phone between bites. I walked to my home office and closed the door. I stood there a long time, staring at my desk and feeling something I didn't want to feel, that cold clarity you get before a storm hits, when every instinct says this is real now. I promised myself I'd never be that husband, the one who snoops, the one who spirals, the one who imagines betrayal because he's insecure. But her speech had made something unavoidable. If she believed so strongly that betrayal was understandable, if she could say it with that much fire, then I had to accept the possibility that she wasn't only defending a friend. I picked up my phone. I made a call I'd been putting off for weeks. A private investigator answered, calm and professional. I told him I needed to verify something. I didn't dramatize it. I didn't even say the word affair. I just said I wanted the truth. We set a start date for Monday. I hung up and sat back in my chair, staring at the wall like it might change into an answer if I waited long enough. Outside the office door, I could hear her in the kitchen, humming softly to herself like the world hadn't shifted. But for me, it already had. Hiring a private investigator wasn't something I ever pictured myself doing. It felt like stepping into a life I used to judge from a distance. But after that dinner, after my wife said men should accept it with a kind of fire that didn't feel theoretical, I couldn't unhear it. If she believed that strongly, I needed to know whether she was living by it. So Monday morning, I met the investigator. His name was Mark. Plain clothes, plain voice, no drama. We sat in a coffee shop near my office, and he asked the kind of questions that made the whole thing feel colder than I wanted it to. Where does she say she goes? What nights? Any habits you've noticed? I told him the basics. Book club twice a week. The gym she joined a few months ago. How she'd been out later than usual lately. I hated myself a little as the words came out, like I was turning my wife into a case file. But Mark just nodded and wrote, I'll start today. Don't confront her without proof. If she knows she's being watched, you lose the truth. The truth. That was all I wanted. Not a fight. Not a scene. Just the answer. Tuesday night, she said she was heading to book club. I watched her get ready. She looked put together. Not wildly different from normal, but deliberate. A little extra time in front of the mirror. A top she hadn't worn in a while. Nothing I could point to without sounding ridiculous. Have fun, I said. She smiled quickly. We might run late. She left with her tote bag and a novel sticking out of it like a badge. 10 minutes after she drove off, the house went quiet in a way I hadn't noticed before. I tried watching TV, but every sound felt too loud, every minute too slow. At 10:47 p.m., Mark texted, she didn't go to the bookstore. We'll update. That was all. One sentence. No accusation. But my chest tightened anyway. She came home after midnight, cheerful, relaxed, said book club was good, then went straight to shower. I lay there listening to the water and telling myself not to convict her in my own head before I had facts. Wednesday passed like a normal day. She went to work, Came home, talked about her friend's divorce again, how unfair the husband was being. I nodded, half listening, half measuring every word against what I might learn next. Thursday, another book club night. She left again, jacket on despite mild weather, phone already in her hand. She looked like someone following a schedule that mattered more than she wanted me to know. At 9:12 p.m., Mark's second text arrived. She parked at Riverside Condos. Entered building with a male in his late 20s. Photos taken. I'm confirming identity. I read it over and over. Riverside Condos wasn't where book club met. It wasn't even near it. It was an address that didn't belong in her story. I felt something go very still inside me. Not a collapse. Not disbelief. More like a door shutting. The kind of quiet you get right before you make a choice you can't walk back from. Mark kept working through the weekend. On the sixth day, he asked me to meet him at his office. When I got there, he slid a folder across the desk without preamble. Inside were photos with timestamps. My wife walking into the condo building. My wife leaving hours later. My wife leaning close to a man beside a car in the parking garage. The images weren't grainy or vague. There was no room to explain them away. Mark's voice stayed professional. She's been meeting him 3 times a week, usually after the gym. Same condo, same pattern. I confirmed who he is, personal trainer from her gym. This has been going on about 4 months. For months. The number hit harder than the pictures. For months meant planning. It meant comfort. It meant she'd been living this while sitting across from me at dinner, while defending her friend, while telling me about needs like it was a moral argument instead of a confession in disguise. I didn't cry. I didn't feel shocked. I felt the end of doubt. Then the anger came, clean and focused. I thanked Mark, paid him, and drove home with the folder on the passenger seat like a weight I couldn't set down. When I walked in, she was on the couch laughing at her phone. "Hey," she said, "how was your day?" "Busy," I answered. My voice surprised me by sounding normal. I went upstairs, closed the bedroom door, and laid the photos on the bed. I didn't go back down to confront her. Not yet. I wasn't going to hand her a chance to rewrite the story before I'd secure the facts. I called a divorce lawyer instead. He listened, asked a few questions, then said, "It's a no-fault state, so you'll still split assets, but evidence like this matters. It affects credibility. We should file right away. Stay calm. Let the paperwork do the talking." I looked at those photos again and heard her voice from that dinner. Men should accept it. "Okay," I said. "File." The filing itself was almost insultingly simple. A fee, signatures, a process that would take a few days. Downstairs, my wife was still on the phone defending her friend like the world's loudest moral judge. I sat there with the folder in my lap and realized I wasn't waiting for an explanation anymore. I was waiting for the right moment to show her she'd already explained everything herself. By Thursday afternoon, the paperwork was already in motion. My lawyer had filed the petition. All that was left was the processing window before she would be officially served. He told me to keep everything calm and quiet until then. No confrontation, no arguments, no warning shots. Let the evidence and the court timeline do their job. His advice made sense. Living was another story. For days I moved around my own house like I was carrying something fragile and dangerous. Every normal moment, coffee in the morning, a quick talk about work, a show in the evening, felt staged. My wife was acting normal, even relaxed. She didn't look like someone hiding anything. She didn't flinch when she met my eyes. If anything, she seemed more confident than usual, like she had convinced herself of her own logic so completely that she didn't fear consequences. She kept defending her best friend with the same speech, only louder now that everyone was arguing about it. She apologized, my wife said Wednesday night, pacing the kitchen while on speakerphone with someone. She wants to fix things, but he's too stubborn. Men always make it about pride. Women have needs, and they act like they're the victims. I didn't respond. Arguing with her had stopped being useful. I wasn't wrestling with opinions anymore. I was waiting for the right moment to put a set of facts down on the table where she couldn't kick them under the rug. That moment came the next night at her parents' house. We'd been invited for dinner, like we were most Thursdays. Her parents were the kind of people who believed in marriage the way they believed in gravity. Not perfect, not romanticized, just real and non-negotiable. Her mom cooked the way she loved, quietly, deeply, without asking for credit. Her dad didn't talk much unless he meant it. They'd always been good to me. I respected them, which made everything I was about to do feel heavier. On the drive over, my wife was unusually talkative. She kept checking her phone, smiling at messages, then slipping it face down in her lap. She told me a small story from work, asked if I wanted to take a short trip around New Year's, complained about traffic. She sounded like we were still the same couple we'd been last year. I listened, nodding, letting her words roll past me. I wasn't trying to trap her, but I couldn't ignore the difference between what she was saying and what I knew. Dinner started normally. Roast chicken, potatoes, salad. Her mom asked about my job. Her dad teased my wife about how she used to hate cooking as a teenager. We laughed, passed plates, played the roles people expect at a family table. For a few minutes, I almost forgot why my chest felt tight. Then my wife brought up her friend again. I just think he's being unreasonable, she said, dropping her fork with a sigh like she'd been carrying the weight of the world. She said sorry. She wants to work on things, but he's acting like she ruined his life. Her dad's face tightened immediately. Cheating ends a marriage, sweetheart. You break that trust, it doesn't come back. She leaned forward, ready for combat. That's old-fashioned. People make mistakes. Marriages are complicated. Women have needs, and men act like their pride matters more than understanding. She said it with the same intensity she'd used at our dinner table the week before. Maybe even more. Her voice was sharp, sure, practiced, like she'd given that speech so many times she believed it was a universal truth. I felt something settle in me. It wasn't anger. It was clarity. My wife was handing me the opening without knowing it. She was building her own justification in front of the one audience that would never accept it. I put my fork down gently. About women's needs, I said. She turned toward me fast. What? And how men should just accept it, I added, keeping my voice even. She glared. Because it's true. Interesting, I said. She didn't understand why that word landed so hard. Her mother looked uncertain. Her father stopped eating. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out my phone. I wasn't shaking. I'd replayed this moment too many times to lose control now. I opened the folder I prepared. Dates, photos, everything clean and clear. Then I turned the screen toward her father. The first image was enough. My wife beside her trainer in a parking garage. Clothes, unmistakable, time-stamped. No blurred faces. No ambiguity. Her dad went rigid. His face flushed a deep red. Her mom gasped so sharply she covered her mouth. My wife stared at the screen, then snapped her eyes up at me like she'd been slapped. What is that? She demanded. Proof, I said, that you're living the philosophy you've been preaching. I swiped to the next photo, her crossing the lobby of a condo building with the same man. Another date. Another time. 4 months of it, I said quietly. She reached for my phone. I pulled it back and held it to my chest. Don't, I said, still calm. She froze, stunned by the fact that I wasn't backing down. You've been spying on me, she said, voice rising. No, I replied. I hired an investigator after your speech about how affairs are understandable. I figured if you believed it that strongly, you might be practicing it. Her mom's eyes were wet now. She looked like she wanted to rewind time by force. Her dad couldn't stop staring at my wife, his expression caught between anger and disbelief. This is out of context, my wife blurted. What context makes 4 months okay? I asked, more disappointed than furious. What context makes all those nights a mistake? She opened her mouth, then closed it. Her face kept shifting, shock, rage, panic, then something like calculation. I pulled out a sealed envelope and set on the table. But don't worry, I said. I accepted it. These are divorce papers. You'll be served on Monday. The room went silent. Even the kitchen clock felt loud. My wife's voice cracked. You can't do this. We need to talk. We can fix it. I looked at her, waiting for some sign of reality, but all I saw was someone cornered. We already talked, I said. You told me what you believe. I listened. Then I stood up. Thank you for dinner, I said to her parents, meaning it. I'm sorry it happened like this. My wife pushed her chair back with a scrape. You're humiliating me. You humiliated us, I answered. I'm just ending what you already broke. I didn't wait for her response. I walked out while the moment was still clear, before it could be rewritten into something messy. The drive home felt unreal. My hands were steady, but my head was loud, not with doubt, with the knowledge that once you say the truth out loud in front of witnesses, there's no going back to pretending. When I got home, I went straight to the garage. My 1972 motorcycle sat under the lights, half rebuilt, half finished, the way it had for years. Working on it had always been my quiet place. I picked up a wrench and started adjusting parts like my life wasn't collapsing in real time. 2 hours later, she burst in. "We need to talk," she said, eyes red, voice shaking. "My lawyer said communication goes through him." I replied without looking up. "You can't just divorce me." "Already filed," I said. "You'll be served Monday." "This is insane. You're overreacting." I finally looked at her. "You said men should accept it," I reminded her. "I accepted it by leaving." She tried a softer tone. "It didn't mean anything. I love you. We can work through this." "Like your friend wanted to work through it?" I asked. "The one you said was being treated unfairly?" She stopped. Silence hit her like a wall. "Get out of the garage," I said quietly. "This is my space." She left hard, slamming the door behind her. I heard her phone start ringing inside the house almost immediately. The story was already spreading. But I went back to the bike because at that moment I needed one thing in my life that didn't lie to me. I thought the hardest part would be showing her the evidence. I was wrong. The hardest part was everything that happened after, when the truth stopped being private and became a weapon everyone wanted to hold. 3 weeks after I walked out of her parents' house, I got served with her response. I was expecting it. My lawyer had warned me. Still, seeing her demands in black ink made my jaw tighten. She wanted the house. We bought it during the marriage. Nothing fancy, but it was ours, worth around $420,000, with about $190,000 still owed on the mortgage. She wanted full ownership. She also wanted her 2021 SUV, and for me, to keep paying half the loan until she decided otherwise. Half my retirement accounts, half my pension, spousal support for 3 years. Then came the line that actually made me laugh out loud. She wanted my motorcycle, the same motorcycle she'd rolled her eyes at for years, the one she called my midlife crisis project, the one she complained about whenever I spent a Saturday in the garage. Now, it was suddenly a treasured marital asset she felt emotionally attached to. I handed the papers to my lawyer and said, "She doesn't even like that bike." He didn't smile. He'd seen this movie before. People ask for everything because negotiating starts high. Don't take it personally. We'll respond with facts. Fact for the one thing I still trusted. Her lawyer sent a separate list titled something like husband shortcomings. It read like a script she'd been rehearsing for months. I worked too much. I didn't prioritize her emotional needs. I spent too much time on hobbies. I made her feel lonely. Therefore, she made a mistake. My lawyer looked at me and raised his eyebrows. I work 40 hours a week. I come home on time more often than not. I never disappeared for nights at a time. I didn't gamble, drink, or treat her badly. I wasn't perfect, but I wasn't absent. The complaint wasn't about time. It was about entitlement. We sent back the PI report in full. Photos with timestamps, parking garage shots, condo entrances, patterns, the identity of her trainer. Along with that, my lawyer attached a written summary of her own words at her parents' table. Her speech about needs and acceptance. Not a rant, not an accusation, just her philosophy recorded like testimony. Her lawyer got very quiet after that, but my wife didn't. When she realized she couldn't tear down the evidence, she pivoted. She went after the story. She started calling my family. My brother called me first. "Dude," he said, sounding unsure of which side of reality he was standing on. "What's going on?" She called Mom crying. "She's saying you've been controlling, emotionally abusive, that you isolated her. She says you hired someone to stalk her, and now you're punishing her for trying to have friends." I closed my eyes and let out a slow breath. "She cheated for 4 months," I said. "I have proof. She's trying to flip the script." There was a pause. Then my brother sighed. "Yeah, that tracks. She always knew how to make herself the victim. Want me to talk to her?" "No, just don't believe anything without checking with me." My mom called next. Her voice was gentle but shaky. like she wanted to be fair to both of us. She says you won't even consider counseling. Mom said. She sounded really hurt. Mom, I said carefully, she cheated on me for 4 months with her trainer. I have photos. Silence. Long and heavy. Oh, she finally whispered. Oh my, yeah. I'm so sorry, she said. What do you need from me? Just the truth out there, I replied, before she poisons everyone. She did the same thing with mutual friends. She posted vague, dramatic lines online about learning who your real friends are and surviving emotional abuse. She implies things without saying them, the way some people throw smoke and call honesty. Half our circle believed her immediately. The other half reached out to me quietly, confused. What happened, they asked. I sent them short, blunt summaries. No rants. No screenshots dumped into group chats. Just facts. She cheated. I found out. I filed. Now she's pretending I'm a villain. I lost some friends that week. People who preferred a clean story over an honest one. It hurt more than I expected, but not enough to make me chase them. The ones who mattered stayed. That should have been the worst of it. Then she pulled a move that made my lawyer sit up straighter in his chair. 2 weeks after being served, she filed for a restraining order. She claimed I was unstable, that I was threatening, that she feared for her safety. When my lawyer called to tell me, I thought he was joking. Based on what? I asked. He read her petition. Apparently, her evidence was me being in my own garage when she came home, me refusing to argue, me leaving her parents' house instead of fighting in front of them, me hiring a PI. In other words, me not giving her the chaos she wanted. The hearing was fast. Quick docket, quick review. I sat there in a courtroom that smelled like old paper and stale air, listening to her lawyer describe me like I was a ticking bomb. The judge read her petition, then flipped through my lawyer's response. The PI evidence was attached. Her own words were attached. Everything cleanly labeled. He looked up at her. Ma'am, do you have evidence of threats or violence? She shifted in her seat, eyes wide. He's being cold and distant. The judge didn't react. That's not a threat, he said. That's someone going through a divorce. Do you have evidence of actual threats? She tried another angle. He hired someone to follow me. A licensed investigator to document suspected infidelity, which was confirmed, the judge said flatly. That is not illegal. Do you have evidence of actual threats? She didn't. The judge sighed, like he'd seen this too many times already. Request denied. Her lawyer looked embarrassed. Mine looked quietly satisfied in the way professionals do when the truth wins without needing theatrics. Outside the courthouse, she tried to approach me, fast and furious. My lawyer stepped between us without even looking at her. All communication through counsel, he said. This is ridiculous, she yelled, voice cracking. I made a mistake. I apologized. I kept my hands in my pockets, so no one could interpret my body language as aggression. You didn't make a mistake, I said evenly. You made a choice. For months of choices. Live with that. Her best friend, the one who started this whole chain reaction, showed up in the parking lot like an extra called in for the final scene. She stormed toward me, shouting about how I was destroying a marriage over one mistake, how men couldn't handle women having needs. Security walked them away. I watched them go and felt the irony land like a stone in water. They were repeating the same argument that had lit the fuse at my dinner table, the same one that had exposed my wife's real life by accident, the same one that now sounded less like a philosophy and more like an excuse they couldn't survive without. By then, I wasn't angry in a wild way anymore. I was tired of the lies, tired of the shifting stories, tired of having to prove I wasn't the villain in a story I never wrote. But under the exhaustion was something steady. I had evidence. I had witnesses. I had a lawyer who knew the game. And I had already done the hardest part. I had walked away without begging for a version of her that didn't exist. The war was going to keep going for a while. I knew that. But she was running out of weapons that weren't built on fiction. And I wasn't giving her any new ones. For months after the night at her parents' table, the divorce was finalized. By then, I'd stopped being surprised by anything. The process had taught me that when someone is cornered by their own choices, they don't always retreat. Sometimes they double down, sometimes they rewrite reality, And sometimes they try every door until one opens. But doors don't open forever. The final hearing was quiet. No dramatic speeches. Just numbers, dates, and a judge who had seen enough broken marriages to recognize the difference between a mistake and a pattern. Here's how it landed. She got the house. I moved out 2 months before the final ruling. Not because I had to, but because I couldn't breathe there anymore. The judge said the home should stay with her, since she earned less than I did. She had to refinance within 6 months, remove my name, and pay me $95,000 for my share. If she couldn't, the house would be sold and we'd split what was left. I didn't argue much. I wanted clean distance more than I wanted a long fight. She kept her SUV too, but the judge gave her 60 days to get my name off the loan. If she didn't, it would be repossessed and sold. That part felt fair. I wasn't going to stay tied to her through monthly payments. Retirement was less one-sided than she demanded. She asked for half of everything. The judge awarded her 30% of what was earned during the marriage. He didn't say it outright, but it was clear he was factoring in credibility. Even in a no-fault state, responsibility finds its way into the room. Spousal support was $850 a month for 18 months. She wanted 3 years. The judge noted she was healthy, employed, and capable of supporting herself. I don't know if she heard that as an insult or a lifeline. I heard it as closure. Then came the motorcycle. That fight could have been its own trial. She pushed for it hard, describing it like a shared dream she'd supported all along. Her lawyer called it marital property with emotional significance. I sat there thinking about all the times she called it my midlife project and told friends I cared more about metal than marriage. My lawyer brought receipts. Every part I'd bought. Every upgrade. The frame and engine purchased 2 months before we got married. A log I'd kept without meaning to, because that's what you do when you're restoring something that matters to you. The judge looked through it all and ruled the bike was mine. He said the project began before the marriage, that my labor and time were personal, and that she'd shown no interest until divorce proceedings. The words were calm and final. When he said it, I glanced at her. Her face tightened in a way that wasn't grief. It was the expression of someone realizing control had limits. She started to talk about an appeal. Her lawyer leaned in and shut that down fast. I don't know what he whispered, but she went quiet. The cost to me, when I added it all up, was heavy but survivable. My reduced house equity, the support payments, the cut of retirement, and legal fees. I won't pretend it didn't sting. Divorce is a slow form of surgery. You lose tissue even when the tumor isn't yours. After it was done, life didn't instantly feel better. It felt emptier first. The apartment I rented was smaller than our house, but it was clean, quiet mine. No tension in the walls. No late-night book club exits. No moral speeches over dinner. Through the grapevine, I heard she was struggling with a mortgage. She didn't make enough to carry that payment easily. She tried to find roommates. She posted online about fresh starts and healing. Maybe she believed it. Maybe she needed to. I also heard the trainer disappeared from her life the moment the divorce went public, which didn't surprise me. A secret can feel exciting right up until it becomes daylight. Daylight is less flattering. Her best friend's divorce finalized around the same time. From what I heard, she lost a lot too. House, stability, the respect of people who used to defend her. My wife didn't mention her much after that. Funny how loud philosophies get quiet when their consequences show up. Her parents and I didn't talk much. Her dad stopped speaking to her for a while. Her mom called me once, tears in her voice, to say she was sorry for what happened. I told her I didn't blame her. I meant it. Me? I finished a motorcycle. The last bolt went in a week after the ruling. I rolled it out of the garage on a Saturday morning, the engine sounding like a heartbeat you can finally trust again. I took it on a long ride with no destination. Just road, wind, and the sense that every mile was mine. At a vintage show, a couple guys offered me $22,000 for it. I said no without thinking. That bike wasn't just a machine. It was 3 years of patience. A reminder that some things get better when you keep showing up for them, even when life is loud. I started seeing someone new, slowly. The dating world at 36 is strange. Everybody carries something. I'm not rushing. I'm paying attention. One of the first things I noticed was how easy it felt to be around someone who didn't treat loyalty like a negotiation. My ex texted a few times from unknown numbers, sometimes about the house, sometimes about money, sometimes about how I destroyed everything. I didn't respond. The lawyer handled the practical parts. The rest was noise. If I had replied, I would have said this. You don't destroy a marriage by leaving after betrayal. You destroy it by choosing betrayal in the first place. I didn't burn our life down. I just stopped pretending it wasn't already on fire. People ask if I'm okay. I tell them the truth. I'm not great, not terrible, just okay. And okay is a solid place to rebuild from. The bike's in my living room now, climate-controlled, locked building, safe from anyone who suddenly claims attachment to it. I look at it sometimes and think about the difference between what's worth fighting for and what's worth walking away from. That difference used to be hard for me. Now it's simple. Some things you repair, some things you leave, and knowing which is how you keep your life honest. Thank you for listening to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Also, leave a comment below to share your thoughts on what happened. Take care.